All right. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. So, um, maybe you guys saw the last part. So I'm not going to name this a new part because we kind of got sidetracked. But nonetheless, there was some interesting feedback, and I kind of highly enjoyed how that panned out. Um, there is, of course, indeed always a danger of, walking people through certain things and basically building on top of things that that might be misunderstood as a final solution, right? So that's indeed something that I don't know if you saw the last video. Indeed, something you might want to kind of reconsider. But I still think that it makes sense to overall, like just walk from A to B. So basically, get to the point where we want to be step by step, and that's why basically I chose that kind of format, and hope that helps. But it was an interesting round to basically get feedback from an experienced developer and I know this developer pretty well, so that he definitely is somebody with experience and due diligence when it comes to clean code. To basically get that opinion, like, okay, why don't you start how you would actually build it, right? That was basically what he said. Is kind of like, okay, hey, why don't you write it like you would normally, if you wouldn't have an audience. And of course, that the point is like, well, yeah, but that's not what I'm doing here, right? So what I'm writing here is not taking into account all of the steps that I would normally kind of foresee, because coding is a little bit like playing chess, if you want, so right, where you kind of like you look at steps ahead at a certain with a certain level of experience, and basically make your decisions based on that. And the fact that that's not really happening here has everything to do with us basically walking through those steps rather than actually just foreseeing them. And I still think that makes sense. So I'm going to um, assume that you guys are aware that we're walking through something here, and until we're done with this micro series, that is not something that is code with best practices, but it's in the process of becoming exactly that, right? So that said, let's maybe see where we left off. Let me first of all quickly see if anybody's online. So it doesn't seem to be the case. Let's open up Discord and see what's going on here. Yep, so let me see. Okay, so I tried out more and more, right? So one of the things that I added to the channels is you can now watch me basically on um, what's it called, Facebook as well, even though I hate Facebook from every aspect of life. But you got to go with the crowd, right? So let me actually just say, like, okay, let me see where that is happening, so I can kind of share all the links where that's working, right? So this wants me to sign in, which I don't want to. Okay, I actually have to sign in here quickly. Sorry, I know that you guys don't see anything, but pretty sure you have an understanding of why I don't want to show my password and stuff. So let's see what's happening here, and how that would even work. How would that even work? Where's this? channel list here. Destinations, so that's apparently working. YouTube is working, Periscope is working, Twitch is working. So I think we're kind of ready to start. And again, if you want to interact, so the only thing that you really need to do is to get on the Discord server. That's definitely something that you probably want to do. So this is basically what's happening here, right? How do I do this? Like that? Yeah, I guess so. What the hell? Oh, okay. That's kind of weird. Okay, so that would be the Facebook link. Just so you guys see that that's happening at the same time here. Okay. Okay, fair enough. So let's jump back into it, right? So let's go to the other view here. There we go. Okay, so where have we left off? So we were at the index and we were basically talking about like, okay, how the router is going to work, right? So what we said is, hey, we have a particular need for our routes to be a little bit nicer, right? Okay. Undefined index, another. Wait, what did we do here? Oh, right. We kind of have to be careful. So in our composer JSON, what we did is we kind of redefined how controllers will look like. And what I like about that is actually I don't like that in particular. But what I do like is the idea to say, hey, why are the models plural? Oh, so the controllers. And the controllers aren't. Yeah. Okay, so here's basically what we want to do. Oops, sorry, not that one. And so all of our controllers are now controllers, and we have our home. That's controllers. And that's basically what we have so far, right? Oh, the post. We need the post. Okay. So that is indeed something that's simply cleaner. So let's kind of take that into account. And what we want to do in general is let's first save this and make sure that actually that our composer understands that. I forgot what kind of changes we made, so better run this quickly. It's going to take longer than I was hoping for. Come on. Kick on. Okay. That took a while, but that's okay. My upstream is kind of in use. Okay. So now we basically should have a better experience, but not with the route. Controller about not found. Oh, no. Okay, what did we break now? What did we break now? That one. Our logical, or kind of like a fake router here. Okay. Cool. Undefined index, another. And about line 14. Okay, that's absolutely fair. That's actually fair. So this is how we will get there now, right? Okay. Now let's check this out. Get another is not set. That's fair. That's fair. So, but we could read it, right? As we have seen. So what we can do is if we actually, let's revert that quickly and say, okay, so what we want to see here, and this is not even what I anticipate here, but it doesn't matter. So if I were to say, okay, hey, and another is test, right? Then you basically see, okay, this is our output of this. So it can still read the get parameters. So far so good. Now let's get back to what we're actually doing here. Let's actually close the others and say, okay, so we created those parts, that is fine. And that's basically what we're loading here, and the rest we're just going to rely on the controllers to read that. And now the point that we kind of have in question is, okay, fair enough, but what happens if we want to have a different kind of output, right? So here we basically always have our echo from the main, and that would always go into the whole view shebang here, right? So, and okay, this is our really high level function, so let's leave that alone for now. And what we do want to do, this will not work. What we do want to do, of course, is to say, well, what are the different forms of output that we can have? So right now we're basically defaulting to view, but what if we want to have a format where we say, actually, we want to account for different kinds, right? So this could be a route component. In that case, we would also want a route, but we could also basically want to have a, like, let's say a JSON or a custom header of whatever kind. So in our example, we're going to account for that. And in which way are we accounting for it? Well, we want to create an API routing. And let's first think about it, like how we would like to write this. So if I go into my about, now what I would like to write is to say, okay, so an about could have maybe a get, right, from the functionality. Now with those kind of things, you need to be careful because those are keywords, correct? So what I actually want to have is a get about to secure myself against that kind of problem, and then basically work from there, right? And say, okay, that is basically what I want to achieve here. Now, if you think about it, a get will always have our some form of get, correct? So I would always like to have something like, okay, just give me whatever I have here per default. Let's get rid of that one now, right? And I might also have a function post about, right? That would basically be a post call. And if you think about what I really want to achieve in there is to say, like, okay, so accept payload, right? That's what an API would do. Then whatever business logic is required. So I don't know, write to DB maybe, or whatever, or it's a get. It's a get, so maybe something like that. And then at the end, you want to say return as JSON, right? So how would you go about doing that? And here we basically have a relatively similar idea where we say, okay, so a post will accept a payload, right? Or not. Same here, of course, or not. And I don't know, insert into DB, and then return as JSON. So what are the similarities here? Well, of course, every kind of call will accept some form of payload or not, and every kind of call will return a JSON. So let's try to abstract that away and basically say, okay, so what could potentially happen here? So the first thing that we have to decide on is, like, how does our call look like, right? So if you say, well, let's just assume that whatever starts with API has that kind of format, right? So something like API about, which would now simply give me a, hey, controls API does not exist, could potentially do that. And if that is the case, then we probably need, a different form of routing, and basically decide, okay, how is that going to look like? So in our part 0, we could basically account for that and say, well, we would know it here before we're actually starting to route. Correct? So if we had an API about, then we have the possibility to basically route to the same controller, but in a very different manner. So let's try to write that in here now, but we already get to the point where we say, well, and there's another if that basically influences this behavior. Correct? So at this point, it kind of makes sense to say, why don't we start a new file that's our router. Okay, simple PHP file for now that we call router. Actually, as a matter of fact, I want to call this router. Okay. Yep. Okay. Fair enough. And so my router is here kind of lost, and I don't know what it's going to interact with, right? So I'm probably going to move this into a folder that I will call base. Or you could call it utilities or whatever. All right. Yes, let's move it into here. And we also want to give this a namespace, right? And the namespace here is, in that case, is base. So do you see how we did that with the controllers? Where we said, okay, so the namespace is just the actual routing from our autoload. So here, the only thing that we really need to do is to say, okay, this is base and is our class router, right? That's all we need, and it'll do for now. And again, we're going to go to our composer and say, okay, so apparently we have something like space, right? Let's account for that and say, okay, base is something I will find in the folder base, right? So far, so good. And what we do here then in our router is basically, let's start with basically getting all of this over, right? So let's basically say, okay. So let's see how we're going to work in the title, but let's even take that one. Let's even take that one for now and move that over here, just so we can look at it. Just so we can look at it, and then here, what we're basically going to do here is comment it out for now. And then basically wonder, okay, so if this is our main output, as you can see, we have no current route here, right? And then we have this kind of an output system. So where does that leave us, right, with our logic here? So let's take maybe this one for now also over, and say, okay, let's see what we're going to do about that. Let's see what we're going to do about that. And then here's the basic idea. Okay, so what does the router need to know? Well, the get route, right? That's all it needs to know. So basically, let's work on that and say, okay, so we have a function construct, and in this construct, probably most of this stuff is happening. Probably most of this stuff is happening, and we will see what exactly that means for us in a second, right? So we have this current route that did we define that somewhere in general? No, we have not. Okay, and we probably want to say, well, okay, whatever happens here does a couple of things, and there's something like a title, which we probably want to maybe access somewhere else. So I'm going to have a public title, and maybe also not. We will see whether or not that's happening. And we will also have a public current route. Why we will have that will make sense for later. current route. So that's going to be public. And then what we will also have is basically the idea to say, okay, no, actually we don't even need to have anything of that right now. Or this equals homepage. This is actually something we could stupidly put in, right? Okay. And okay, so this echo now, so the template is something that we don't have in here. That has something to do with us not using it, but let's just say function output, I'm going to call this rendered output. Yep, and that's going to be stupid for now as well, and that's actually going to return, you know what, I'm just going to call this just output, and that's going to return this. All right, so get that away from here. Now the template I don't have, let's quickly use that. Let's quickly use that. And so that should be available now. And so that uses diffuse main HTML. That is probably something that we don't want to decide in here. Right, we're going to get to that in a second. And the substitutions is probably something that we want to put in right here. Okay, and also going to declare this empty. And this guy is, I'm not sure if we're going to paste that in here, but yeah, why not? HTML skeleton. And I'm constantly have to see how that's actually written. Skeleton, just like that, probably. Makes our life easy. Let me quickly see if the microphone is even on, because the latest, yeah. Okay. So far so good. So the HTML skeleton is something that we're definitely going to assign, right? So here another public, and actually this doesn't need to be public. So we're going to say a private skeleton, and here we're basically going to say this skeleton equals HTML skeleton, and then here we can specify. Okay. So the reason we want to do this is to make this base reusable. So we don't know, how our views in other projects might look like, and whether or not we're going to call this main, and how that's going to look and work in general. So we're just going to pretend that we don't know that this is in views main, and you have to pass that in from above, right? That's basically how we're going to capture this issue. Now let's see if we're using the title. This is not the case. So here we're going to do that. And at this point, we basically want to make a decision, right? Where we say, okay, so function and I'm going to call this a page route. Yeah, maybe. Let's talk about naming in a second here and say, okay, so what is my point here? Oh, I'm sorry, this happens before, right? So here I want to say, okay, well, if parts 0 is API, then whatever, else this page route. Make sense? And what I can do now is to basically say, okay, let's move this stuff over. So now I basically know, okay, those are the parts, and I basically put that in here, right? So do I really need only the first part? Let's assume that's the case. Let's assume that's the case, and here I basically say, okay, controller. So what I can do now is to basically say this one is not necessary anymore. And here I can say home, right, is my standard. And then I don't need any of the other stuff anymore. I can basically say, okay, so this is going to be my controller. And actually the UC first is something that I'm probably already going to just put in here, just because I know that eventually we will figure out that we need some more functionality around this. So I'm not even going to do that here, and just say, okay, this function just expects the controller. Okay, that's how it goes. And so those are a little bit more global things here. This current route, and then this title. Okay, so far so good. And so what we do know is that, well, no, actually, let's not overdo it. Let's not overdo it, one step at a time. So those are my parts. And when it gets a little bit more complicated, when we say, okay, what about an API call, right? So an API call, let's create that one and say, okay, function API route, and let's figure out what that needs. So an API route has a very different format, right? So what do we need to do here? We need to see, okay, what method, right? What HTTP method are we dealing here with? And so that's the first thing that we probably want to do, is to say, okay, so this API route. So in that case, it's a little bit complicated, right? So we know that the first thing is going to be API, right? That's super straightforward. Okay, API, understood. So that's going to be our part one. So we don't really ever again need to know that, because we already know, okay, we're dealing with an API. Now the next thing would basically be the controller that we're dealing with, correct? So that's what I'm going to paste in here. But the question is that correct? Because do you see how no, actually that is correct. That is correct, sorry. Again, keep this simple. So then we're done with this. If is set route, that will always be set now with the htaccess that we have. Okay, and which basically means that none of this we need anymore. Okay, and here we're basically going to say, okay, this is again our controller. So we know the controller, and the method is something that we're going to derive from the from this send over method itself, right? So there is a server variable that would allow us to basically ask for exactly that. Oops. Is it not an HTTP? Is that a request? Is that in request? No, it's not a request. No, that's in server. Request method. There we go. That would basically say, okay, that is our method. So that might output something like, you know, okay, this is a post, this is a put, this is a get, whatever, right? So that's what we basically want to read. And then we also know from the controller, how the controller is called, what kind of function we want to execute. So again, let's look at that and say, all right, so if we have a get about and the controller is called about, that makes life easy. I just need to say, okay, so I need the method in lowercase plus the controller name, right, to be executed. And that's basically how it works. So let's first basically see, okay, what then is our function. Sorry, let's be super clear here. Our method is, and then lowercase request method, right? We don't know how that comes over. Still too lower, right? Yeah, there we go. Plus our controller. Okay, that would be our method. Okay, that's cool. What's the next thing that we have is retrieve payload. Okay, so you know that there's a get and then there's a post. So the easiest way to do this is to basically say, hey, either is fine, right? And that, oops, and that is the request. So this would basically be post or get. Okay, so that's what we basically want as basically the body. Now it's a little bit tricky. Actually, you would have to capture an input for files and so on, but again, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So let's just assume that request gets everything that we actually want from here, and just go from there. So the request will now basically contain a lot of things, right? So our get route and so on will all be part of this. So our body, if you want, so let's call it payload, will basically be everything that's, if I were to set that to request, let's actually do this for now, right? Let's do this for now and say, okay, so let's just var down payload and die. Not do too many things at once here. So let's first make sure that we basically use all of this stuff in our index. So all of this stuff doesn't exist yet, right? So that is all gone. The which controller is kind of also gone. Generate route is something that we also don't need, and substitutions is something that we're going to input in our output, right? Yes. Yep. So basically what we have is the following. We're basically going to say, okay, so we're going to basically create a app, and our app is going to be a new router, and the HTML skeleton that we use is going to be in views, do we call it main? I think so. Views main HTML. Okay? Right, yeah, that's what it is. And really with a slash? What is my path? Did I set a path? Okay. In my end file. Okay, so let's keep the slash in just to be sure. Okay, so that's basically what's happening. And here at the very end, right, I have something that is app output and where my substitutions go in. And this is something that I always want to echo. Okay? So my current, my title and my current route don't really work anymore, right? So from the setup that I've chosen, what I want to do, of course, is to say, okay, this is now app current route view, and this is my app title. Okay, so that's all I'm setting here. Now we got to be careful because this view is potentially not set if we're actually let's try this out quickly. So now we're at the point of where we quickly want to run the, do we make changes? Yeah, I think so. Where we quickly want to go and see whether or not we get any kind of output again. And then basically switch over and see what we're getting here. Okay, in router on line 16. In router on line 16. Undefined offset 2. Oh yeah, but that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. So as you can basically see, what's happening now is that I get the API about from here from my payload. Do you see that? So the route is something that, of course, is something that I want to completely ignore, right? So in order to do that, I'm going to make it actually super simple and say, okay, so that's probably for now the only thing that we want to exclude. Is it? I'm not sure yet. I'm going to make it a little bit dumbed down and say, hey, because again, later on we're going to need to add some stuff as request, or actually let's do as key value, and then add to payload key value. Okay, no, payload is of course something that we haven't defined yet as an empty array. Okay, and so now we basically have that going for us. Of course, we want to say, well, if key is not route, right? In this very case. Oops. In this very case, we want to do that. I'll drink something quickly here. Okay. Let's actually get this thing here a little bit nicer arranged. Okie dokie. So the let's get this out. So if we do basically the same thing again, then we could see, okay, now the payload is empty. Now we are in a get mode here in general. So if I say another equals sum, then I would see, okay, so this still works. So if I actually send an API call, then that kind of stuff is something I can, pass actual payloads into, in this case in a get format, which is the only thing we're gonna test basically for now. So what we don't do though is we do not execute that on the right kind of controller, right? So that's basically what's happening here, and that is something that we kind of need to do. So you probably see that, okay, what we're doing here is we're creating the class that we're actually going to call. And that is something that we can either now copy and paste, but there's the principle of dry, right? Don't repeat yourself. So we actually want to see, okay, is there something where we potentially could maybe automate this? And the answer is, of course we can. So we're going to call this construct controller. I'm not sure why that's so red. Okay, construct controller. Actually move that to a pserv. And that does exactly this. Right? It's the only time we need it. See that? Okay, and we need that in both cases, right? So from a higher level, we can now basically say, okay, hold on a second. So what do we need this for? right? If the only thing that we're doing here is to set the title. And that's fair for now, I guess. The only question is, okay, where does this controller come from, right? And does it really default to home in the case of an API, for example? So let's kind of try that out, right? So the API route would basically say, okay, I want to use this functionality as well. Let me actually see if that is really the way that I want to do it. It is. It is. So let's basically say, okay, construct controller, and let's get this out and say we're going to take care of this once and for all, and now it's good for both, right? Sorry, no, it's not. It's actually not, because the API, of course, would have a different part in that case. Let me see if this is really what how I want to do this. Construct controller. Yeah, and then do I ever need that again? No. I don't. I don't. Let's pass it in for now to make our lives easy. This will also change again fundamentally, but for now, this is the easiest way to do it. So this is basically not happening here. It is happening here for now. And of course, in the same way, it's happening here for now. Okay. So the current route is then something that we basically have, and we can also pass that on. The method is something that we already have figured out what that will be. And basically, we can now say, okay, the requested key value, so we put all that together, and now we could potentially simply execute the what's it called, the API, right? And that's also what we're going to do. Now, what we need to kind of like think about is to say like, okay, so in our index, we're still calling the output here, right? And we're still getting all of those basically substitutions together, and potentially that's, you know, creating things that we never need. Here we're not worried about that whatsoever. So what we can do is to basically say, well, what if whatever's below here happens conditionally, right? So it actually never happens if we run into an API, because we don't need everything that we're going to build in the future here will not really happen. So if we want to do that, and we have to see whether or not that's best practice or not, is to say, okay, so in our API, can we actually really exit here, right? Could this really be the end of it? And that's something we're going to figure out. So what do we want to do here? Effectively, we want to echo something, right? We always want to echo a JSON encode, right, of the result of the execution of our particular controller. So here we say return as JSON. So in other words, what we really want to echo here is to say, okay, so you get basically my this current route, right, which would basically be the class name of the controller, and I can simply pass in the payload, right? And that's all I need. Is it? It's not all I need. It's not all I need because that is my, nope, sorry about that. So here would basically be my, where do I even call that? Wait, I have this in current route. No, that exists. That exists. Current route is the instance, and then therefore here I'm going to get the method and then the payload. Okay, so that's what I'm basically going to construct. Correct. And so what I have built now should basically work for us, right? I mean, I hope this is not too weird to read. If it is, I mean, feel free, you know, like you've got these kind of like control structures in PHP to make things clear. Okay, so that's basically what's happening here. And let's try it out. So what we should do now, if we're calling API route with another sum, is that in our about, if we say get about, so let's just say that. We are simply going to say, okay, what if we return body? Right, what then? And if I actually do that, oh, and I actually do get a null, which is not what I expected. Not what I expected. Why is that? Let's quickly see. Ah, nope, I forgot, no debugging. Let's basically say, let's see if that's possible. What I'm doing here. All right, and then I say var dump call. And do this again. Okay. So, whoops, now it works like a charm. Wait, what? Hold on a second. Going crazy? Okay, there must have been some cache issue. Interesting. Okay. Very interesting. Okay, so now basically my routes work. So I don't know if you can see that, but we still have a kind of an issue with the header, right? This is returned as text. So in an API version, what we still need to do is to say, hey, make sure that the and I quickly have to Google this, PHP header return JSON. I'm pretty sure, here we go. That's it. Oops. Okay. And we will immediately see. Oh, is this the right kind of header? Let me actually see if that's the case. In my network, bum. Okay, that's actually not really nice to see in Chrome. I have to say I highly prefer that on Firefox or Safari, how that's interpreted. Nonetheless, my response headers are application JSON, so that should be fine. And my API could probably work with that like a charm. Okay, so basically you also see that nothing else is executed. I don't get a title, nothing. So this actually also simply like stops the complete process. So I'm basically done with my routing and could potentially say, well, okay, now I can keep on trucking. Right? The only thing that really bothers me now is to say, okay, so here work with the models. We have talked about that. Here are the post. Yeah, in theory, we're pretty close and can probably talk about style and typing already. But I'll save that basically for another day. What I think I want to do now is to say, let's get this up. I'm not sure why we're updating our indices here down here. This is probably busy with stuff, but I'm going to commit that and say, okay, that is definitely not the kind of stuff that we should have waited for so long. So let's see. First of all, what is this? Oh, that's my dot idea. To really push that up. Okay. Example that what kind of change did I make here? Okay. Well, let's be clean, shall we? So right condition, and that is basically something, yeah, we should have committed earlier. That's kind of weird, you know, like how you fall out of your pattern when you're doing stuff like that. And then we have our router and index. What's the startup? Startup is new. Okay, then let's do that. Functionality. It's a separate files. Okay, routing, setup. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Allowed from the structure. Okay. Let's do that. Whoops. Did I not? Oh, I made a mistake now. It doesn't matter. This for this project doesn't matter. We have to completely talk about, you know, how to treat Git. Because that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it. But it's just so much we're going to change that I'm going to ignore that one for now. So, okay. So, I have a guest here that I kind of missed. Hey, Hustledex, how are you doing? Are you still around? Let me see. Oh, it's a Twitch watcher. Yes. So if you want to directly interact or have your code reviewed, you can basically join the Discord server if you like to. Yes. Yeah, you probably come in. I don't know how late or how the latency is. I have not the greatest network here, so I have to sometimes take care of that happening, right? So just so everybody else sees what's going on. Got some interaction here. Some help with Python code. Okay, wow, Python. Haven't seen that in a while. Let me quickly commit what I'm doing here, and then let's see what you need help with. How's that? So then let me quickly get that going and see what we have here. So this is about extend controller. Okay, so I'm quickly going to basically push this up so that you guys can basically have a look at it. And so this runs in the abstraction branch, and I'm going to quickly pull that in. No, that's the wrong one. Come on. So GitHub, and what do we call this? PHP clean, PHP basics, sure. All right, so here's my pull request. Retro video. Let's quickly do that. All right. Now let's see. Okay. Now Python code, huh? What are we working on? Is that are you using some kind of framework, or were you talking web? What what are you dealing with? Let me quickly get into the live interaction channel here on the Discord stream. So let's quickly create an invite here. Okay. So let's have a look at that. Write the code. What would you type with the white part? Okay. Ask the user for their hometown and then ask the user for the year when they were born. Using the variables that you created for their hometown and year they were born, write the code that would print out the following sentence. I was born in so and so. Okay, that's okay. So I see that you're basically a complete beginner. That's cool. That is cool. Yeah. So I don't really want to write that code for you, right? Here's what I can offer you. Okay, you can basically jump into the Discord and share your screen, and we walk through it together. The the stuff with that is okay, actually, let's talk about this from a really high level. Okay, so without answering that question for you, because it makes sense, by the way, this frustration that you feel. Let me see if I have because I don't have Python on this computer. Shell. Okay. The frustration that you have when you're starting out is sometimes a bit necessary, if you want so, right? And I'm saying this because so if I throw a ball up and down and I just catch it, a tennis ball in my hand, then I don't really learn something from it. But if my baby does that and like it just keeps falling down and the baby gets frustrated and so on, the point is like, okay, for me there's no learning process in doing that, but every time the baby tries, it has an effect on or basically it has a progress towards being able to basically pre-calculate, because it's actually complicated, right? If you think about it, like we have to calculate the velocity of that ball falling down again, and then getting our motor system to basically catch it. But okay, let's do it like this, Hustle X. So how do I declare a variable? Can you tell me? In Python, that's pretty straightforward, right? And it kind of, I assume that we have a huge lag in there. So if you're brave enough to jump on the chat, at least, that would be great. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit difficult. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure. You can do that too. Absolutely. Yeah. You can show what you have so far. Absolutely. Okay, we're going for images here apparently. Okay. I see. Um, Help me out a little bit, right? It's been a while with Python. So this is Python 2 markup, right? With print being in parentheses. Yeah, I guess so, right? Python print. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. So and so if you do that without the plus in the back and run it, that does not work. So if you say I was born in, and you probably want to have a space here, by the way, after the N. Right, let's try to reproduce this quickly, right? So again, so this is just our shell. Is this able to write? Let's first of all see if we are in the, because see, this is Python 3.2. Okay, that's fine. Let me actually quickly check that out here. That's a std in. Okay, so not. Oops, weird behavior. Okay, so that seems to be still the case. Okay, so this shell does probably not let me, let's see. No, that works. Okay, we can go with that. How do I clear the console? Like that. Okay. So what do we have is the birthplace is an input. Okay, well, let's reproduce that. Birthplace is user input. Do you need to import the input? I think you need to import the input, right? Whoops, where did it go? Or does it work out of the box? Where are you born? Okay, yeah. Did I click on the int? What's going on with this weird? No. Okay, strange console. Strange console. And the, why does it do that? What? Ugh. Okay. Okay, I am going to do this differently because this is not going to work out for me. Let me quickly check something here. Oh, this actually does seem to work. Okay. Why not? Let's do Python. Oh, you figured it out? Yeah, what's the point? You just got rid of, it was plus the wrong concatenation? Python is such an interesting language. Let's say how would I even run this? I'm interested now, you know. Okay. Yeah, okay, that works. The plus we're missing it up. Yep. Yeah. Right. So I guess what you did is kind of like and then basically What was it? Birthplace and I already forgot. Birthplace and what were you saying? Birth year. Okay. Okay. Well, what did you use instead then? No, here I need the space. Okay. Huh. Interesting. Does this not wait? MLA is not defined. So the input, is it something I need to import? Huh, you know what, I'd be interested now. What's your complete code? Can you show me? How do you do that? Do you require something or you input something? Right, import. Nope. Input, no, you don't import. Huh. Completely forgot how that works in Python. Yeah, let's do that one. Oh, maybe not. I want to have some more structured here. A little bit more structured. Docs. Docs will do. Sure. Okay. Language reference. Library reference. Okay. Did that with my Raspberry Pi a long time ago, and I'm amazed to say that it's completely gone off my head, which is interesting. Because normally stuff like that sticks a little bit better with me, but Python is a language that I simply never use. Yeah, maybe that stuff here. Python cookbook. Oh, come on. Is that not something like that simply walks you through? Ugh. Okay. Just want to see how the input works. Print hello world. Okay. Find the square root. Yeah, that sounds about right. Oh, nope. I want to capture an input. So, okay, swap the variables, turn a random number. Convert to miles. No. No. Prime numbers, fractals, Fibonacci sequences, nice. Of a number, so you need to have a number. Oh, we're already in functions. Okay. Sure. Still no inputs, right? Prime. Let's see how that works in Python. That's file input. You gotta be kidding me. Okay. So you need to do that by yourself. Yeah, I thought so. Okay, why doesn't this work for me? And why is my ad blocker not working? Let's try it out. So it's already interesting to know that this is, of course... Wait, I have a super weird theory here. Super weird theory here. Why is that the case? Why is that the case? I don't know, but I'm getting too tired to figure it out. It is super interesting though. Hey, if you want to, here, Hustle, sorry, what is it, your name? Hustled X. If you want to share some more stuff about that, I'd be highly interested. I've played around with the input outputs of a Raspberry Pi a couple of years ago, and it was actually quite interesting. One of my fun little hobbies. I actually really enjoyed it, and but for some reason, these simple things, right? The simple things, and it might be something as stupid as you know, my local setup. Who knows? Who knows if that's an error here, because I'm not sure if that's an issue. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. I guess. I'll have to figure it out. Anyway, I slowly have to call it a day, I guess, and really go to bed. I'm super tired. So see you guys, and thanks for watching.